Hello there, a very good evening and welcome to another edition of Primetime News on TV1. I'm Charlene Benedict for the Newsfirst team.
And I'm Naveksha Gunasekara. Here are your headlines for tonight.
Newsfirst headlines. Main sponsor.
Ask for S-Lawn Polygon by name.
Leader of the House says earlier QR system stemmed from corruption, while current fuel pass is a result of the global war. Bimal contrasts past economic collapse with the current war-driven fuel management measures.
රාජපක්ෂල වික්‍රමසිංහල ප්‍රේමදාසල බණ්ඩාරනායක එකතු වෙලා සුද්ධ කරපු නිසා තමයි ඒ QR එක ආවේ. අද QR එක වෙලා තියෙන්නේ සුද්ධ නිසා නෙමෙයි යුද්ධ නිසා.
Wednesday declared weekly government holiday from this week. Schools, universities and tuition classes to remain closed on Wednesdays. Opposition calls for tax cuts and fuel price reductions. Energy Minister rejects opposition claims, cites unpredictability of war.
ක්‍රමෝපායක සැලසුම් සකස් කිරීම, strategic planning, ඒ වගේම scenario planning.
ඉරානයේ යුද්ධ තත්ත්වය ගැන හිතේ හිටියා නම් 1980 ගණන් වල ඉඳන් අපි QR එකෙන් තමයි දුවන්න ඕනේ. ඉරානයේ අධ්‍යාත්මික නායකයාට බෝම්බ ප්‍රහාර එනකොට ඒගොල්ලෝ දන්නෙත් නැහැ.
Is global support for the Middle East war fading? Concerns mount over whether President Trump is becoming increasingly isolated. Former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa appears before Bribery Commission. 30 years since Sri Lanka's Cricket World Cup triumph, attention turns to the future of Sri Lankan cricket.
Newsfirst headlines. Main sponsor.
Ask for S-Lawn Polygon by name.
In a top story tonight, President Andrakumara Dissanayake, in a special address to the nation this evening, outlined the measures being implemented to ensure the timely purchase of fuel for Sri Lanka.
අපි ඉක්මන් ටෙන්ඩර් කීපයක් දැම්මා. අද අපි ටෙන්ඩර් එක විවෘත කරා.
We have issued spot tenders. Today we opened one such tender. Through this tender, we received bids from highly reliable suppliers for diesel, crude oil and petrol. We expect to award these tenders to those suppliers. Our objective is to cover the delays we have experienced so far. At the same time, there is a risk that at any moment, a fuel shipment vessel supplying power generation could face disruptions while en route. Therefore, as an additional precaution, we have also taken steps to award tenders specifically for ship-based fuel supply. We are completing that process today. In addition, tomorrow we expect to award another diesel import tender. We already have reliable suppliers for that tender as well. At this moment, the most critical requirement is securing trustworthy suppliers, and we have taken action accordingly. When reviewing all these tenders, there has been a certain price increase. Normally, the premium price is below $3. However, in this situation, the premium has exceeded $3, resulting in a price increase. Despite this, our primary expectation is to ensure the uninterrupted supply of energy. Therefore, we intend to proceed with awarding these tenders. Next, especially during situations like this, we know that a small black market tends to emerge globally. Ships at sea are traded back and forth, and multiple agents intervene with the same vessel. This is a typical scenario during such crises. Unlike the private sector, the public sector does not have the flexibility to make instant purchases. However, we have also taken this into consideration. Accordingly, we have appointed a committee of competent officials authorized to make rapid decisions and facilitate emergency purchases when necessary. If anyone is able to divert an existing vessel to us at this moment, we have provided them with that opportunity. This committee was appointed by the Cabinet. Since all government procurements in Sri Lanka fall under the National Procurement Commission, we have obtained the necessary approvals from the Procurement Commission as well. The decisions made by this committee will be submitted to and approved by the Cabinet. I believe this is one of the mechanisms we have put in place to secure fuel supplies without delay, and we are moving forward by following this process. In particular, this involves the private sector in our country, exporters and especially those engaged in dollar-based businesses such as the tourism industry. These parties earn their income in US dollars. Business associations representing those operating in dollar-based sectors requested that we grant them licenses to import the fuel they require. Accordingly, we have temporarily provided them with that opportunity. They have informed me that around 30 exporters have already registered under this scheme. The tourism sector has also been included under this arrangement. They will import fuel using US dollars and they will sell fuel in US dollars as well. Starting from tomorrow morning, they will be able to supply fuel to the export sector and the tourism industry. As a result, they have already secured fuel supplies and those supplies are currently available in their storage facilities. Therefore, from tomorrow morning onwards, these private companies will begin supplying fuel to exporters and those engaged in the tourism industry. In this way, we are intervening through multiple mechanisms to meet the country's energy requirements.
එනිසා අපි මේ බලශක්ති අවශ්‍යතාවය සපුරා ගැනීම සඳහා දෙවෙනි ක්‍රමවේද ගණනාවකින් අපි මැදිහත් වෙනවා.
Leader of the House, Minister Bimal Ratnayake, today explained the situation Sri Lanka is facing due to the Middle East conflict and the measures taken to manage its impact during a debate in Parliament.
මෙතන ඉන්නවා හැමදාම දුෂ්ටාකාරයට බලන
There are opposition groups here who view everything with hostility, who think nothing from the perspective of the country, and who believe that the political power they lost will somehow return to them, even through missiles fired by Trump. These are politically orphaned opposition groups. I believe the first thing that must be clearly explained is this. A QR system existed before as well. That QR system came about because of corruption. It was introduced because the Rajapaksas, the Vikramasinghas, the Premadasas and the Bandaranayakas together looted the country. That is why that QR system came into being. At that time, there was no shortage of fuel anywhere in the world. There was plenty of fuel. There were fuel ships. Fuel ships were even brought and anchored offshore near the port of Colombo, but there was no money to buy fuel because of corruption. The QR system we have today has not come because of corruption, but because of war. We are introducing the QR system to a country with an economy growing at 5.2%. The Rajapaksas and Ranils introduced a QR system to a country with a negative economy. Today, harvesting is taking place in Vaunia. Not a single harvest has been stopped. The first direct impact we faced from this war did not come through fuel. It came earlier with the incident involving Iranian vessels. Protecting the sailors of these two Iranian ships, safeguarding international law and doing so without causing special harm or special advantage to the United States or any country engaged in the war. How well the president and the government managed that situation. We know that none of the countries that are described as global powers stepped forward, Honorable Speaker. It was the leader of one of the smallest islands on this planet who decided to act. Look at how much international media praised Sri Lanka. I believe that the political value of how the president and the government acted humanely, neutrally and within international law in dealing with those Iranian sailors will extend for hundreds of years into the future. Some people ask why preparations were not made in advance. Honorable Speaker, we cannot even tie a cloth around our waist while standing 7 seas away. If we keep saying all the time that a fuel shortage is coming, a fuel shortage is coming. Sri Lanka's economy will never develop. We say responsibility that there is no need for power cuts at present. No need at all. We are making preparations. But there is absolutely no need for power cuts. However, as the war intensifies after the 27th, the government took a number of decisions. Today, a party leaders' business committee meeting was held in Parliament. We proposed that Wednesday also be declared a holiday for Parliament. Why? Because parliamentary staff travel by public transport. We are trying to limit public transport across the entire country to save fuel. But the opposition leader and a group of MPs came and said postponing Parliament was wrong, claiming that we are trying to silence Parliament. Honourable Speaker, I ask you, out of the 22 million people in this country, if there is a method, when Wednesday has already been declared a public holiday for the people, Parliament is still sitting today and we will sit on Thursday and Friday. Even when there is a holiday for Ramadan, Parliament does not close. That is because the Shura Council usually announces Ramadan late on Thursday night. We have no need to adjourn Parliament. That is why Parliament will sit on Friday. Knowing all of this, it is childish to claim that we are shutting down Parliament on Wednesday. Why was it suspended? To save fuel. Nothing else. Yet some members protested and walked out. I do not know how these people expect to govern the country based on what they did in the past. We also expect, Honourable Speaker, that the President will address Parliament on Friday, as has already been announced. A media briefing by the President will also be held for the public tonight at 7:30 p.m. At that time, we hope that if opposition party leader remains in Parliament, there will be an opportunity to engage in discussions with the President. If they wish to raise concerns or express views directly at the presidential level, we hope that opportunity will be provided to opposition party leaders on Friday. The Cabinet of Ministers has decided to declare Wednesdays as a government holiday, with the measure coming into effect from tomorrow. The decision was taken at a cabinet meeting held last evening, taking into account the prevailing situation arising from the ongoing conflict in the Middle East.
We took this decision to ensure that the economy is not completely shut down or disrupted, while continuing economic activity and minimizing the impact on people's daily lives. This is not a problem of a shortage of dollars, but rather an issue related to disruptions in global oil supply. There were several alternatives when deciding on a suitable day. However, we must move forward without causing any stagnation to the economy, as we are in the process of rebuilding it. If we had declared Friday, Saturday and Sunday as holidays, it would have significantly disrupted administrative operations, as many activities depend on government institutions. That would have had a direct impact on the economy. By declaring Wednesday a holiday, government operations will not come to a complete standstill for several consecutive days. There is also no expectation to recall the entire workforce on the following day. Authority has been delegated to ministry secretaries to make necessary plans and decide which staff members are required to report to work in their respective institutions.
ඒකකවල අවශ්‍ය කරන කාර්ය මණ්ඩලය කැඳවා ගැනීමට අවශ්‍ය පියවර ගන්න කියලා සැලසුම් සකස් කරන්න කියලා
පුද්ගලිකාංශයට නිවාඩු නොදී රාජ්‍යාංශයට නිවාඩු දුන්නම කොහොමද මේක බලශක්තිය කළමනාකරණය කරන්නේ? කොළඹට එන කෝච්චි ටික ඒ විදිහට එනවා නම්, CTV බස් ටික ඒ විදිහට එනවා නම්, පෞද්ගලිකාංශයේ බස් ටිකත් ඒ විදිහට කොළඹට එනවා නම් කොහොමද මේක මැනේජ් කරගන්නේ?
රජ්‍ය ආයතන හැටියට ප්‍රවාහන අමාත්‍යාංශය
As government institutions, there is no intention to operate trains and buses as usual on that day. We expect private offices and institutions to manage their work accordingly. This means that while some government offices will be closed, public transport services will also not operate at normal capacity. By reducing fuel consumption on that day, we can lessen the economic impact and sustain this measure for a longer period.
ආර්ථිකයට කරන බලපෑම අඩු වෙලා තව කාලයක් මේක පවත්වා ගන්න පුළුවන්. පොදු ප්‍රවාහන සේවා සීමා කිරීමක් කරනවා නේද? එතකොට අද දවසේදී අනිවාර්ය සීමා.
Yes, public transport services will definitely be limited on Wednesdays. Essential services will be maintained at the minimum required level. Instructions have already been issued through ministry secretaries to heads of institutions on how to manage this.
කම්මරු හරහා ආයතන ප්‍රධානීන්ට උපදෙස් ලබා දීලා තිබෙනවා.
The Ministry of Education has issued a set of guidelines to all school principals and education authorities regarding the continuation of school activities. Accordingly, every Wednesday is to be treated as a school holiday, with schools required to provide suitable assignments for students to engage in self-learning activities from home. Schools have also been instructed to limit programs and events organized on school premises. Principals have further been advised to temporarily suspend vehicle parades and similar activities that require excessive fuel consumption. In addition, the organization of school educational excursions as well as student participation in trips already scheduled for the coming days has been temporarily suspended until further notice. Meanwhile, Deputy Minister of Education and Higher Education, Madhura Senaviratna, said that government schools, government-approved private schools and preschools have been granted holidays on Wednesdays declared as government holidays. The Deputy Minister also instructed that all tuition classes should be suspended on Wednesdays. The University Grants Commission stated that on Wednesdays declared as government holidays, university academic activities will be conducted online. Its Vice Chairman, Professor Vasantha Lianage, said that universities and student hostels will not be closed. Meanwhile, the Judicial Service Commission has issued instructions for court proceedings to be conducted online on Wednesdays. In a statement, the Commission said it had identified the newly introduced fuel rationing system for vehicles could cause difficulties for individuals who need to travel to courts from remote areas. Accordingly, judges have been advised to consider the prevailing situation before issuing orders related to court cases, the statement added.
What is the fuel distribution situation today? Now, by this afternoon, many of the weaknesses identified in the QR-based fuel distribution system had been corrected. Fuel distribution is now being carried out strictly according to the QR code system. Now, this is the situation reported today from several areas across the country.
අපි කොහොමද අපි අම්බ කරලා කන්න බෑනේ නේද? ඒ කන එක දැන් කොහොමද කරගෙන යනවා ඉතින්. පොඩ්ඩක් කරගෙන යන්න බෑ. තයි අපේ රටේ ප්‍රශ්නයක් නෙමෙයිනේ මේවා.
ජනාධිපතිතුමාට බැන්නම යුද්ධ නවත්තයිද? මේ යුද්ධ නිසා දෙන්නේ නැත්තේ. කරන්න දෙයක් නැහැ. අපි පුරුදු වෙන්න ඕන ලෝකේ යන විදියට අපිත් යන්න එච්චරයි.
කලබල වෙලා වැඩක් නැහැ. ඉතින් තියෙන විදියට පුළුවන් තරම් ගමන් වාර අඩු කරගෙන ඉවරලා මේ තත්ත්වයේ මගහරවා ගැනීමේ ක්‍රියාපිළිවෙලකට එනවා මිසක තර්ක විතර්ක කිරීමෙන් මං හිතන්නේ කිසි බලක් නැහැ. යුද්ධය අවසන් වෙනතුරු මේ ආකාරයට ගිහිල්ලා ඉවරලා ඉන්පස්සේ අපේ ඉදිරි ගමන දිහා බලන එක. යම් ආකාරයක කැපවීම කරන්නත් ඉදිරියට සිදු වෙයි. ඉතින් ඒක ඉතින් අපි හැමෝම විනදරාගෙන යා යුතු ගමනක් බවට පත් වෙනවා.
හරි ක්‍රමයට තෙල් ටික වදිනවා. ගැටලුවක් නැහැ. යුද අර්බුදයකින්ද තෙල් ටික නැතුනේ ලංකාවට. නැත්නම් ලංකාවේ සල්ලි තියෙන තෙල් ගේන්න කවුරු හරි අඩුපාඩුවක් තියෙනවනේ ඒක බෙදා හදාගෙන කරගන්න ඕන. තමන් ගැන විතරක් හිතලා හරියන්නේ නැහැ. මේක ලෝක අර්බුදයක්නේ. මම නම් පුද්ගලිකව දොස් කියන්නේ හේතුව මොකද මේක ලෝක අර්බුදයක්. අපි කාටවත් ඇඟිලි දික් කරන්න ඕනේ. අපි හැමෝම එකතු වෙලා ඉවසීමේ මේ වැඩේකට සහයෝගයක් දීලා මේ රජයටත් ඒ සහයෝගයක් දීලා මාස කිහිපයකට විතරයි මේ තියෙන පීඩනය තියෙන්නේ. මේක ජාත්‍යන්තර ඇති වෙච්ච ප්‍රශ්නයක් තමයි අද මේ මුහුණ දීලා තියෙන්නේ. ඉතින් මේක ආණ්ඩුවට බැනලාවත් මේ කාටවත් පාර්ශවයකට බැනලා වැඩක් නැහැ. QR ක්‍රමය ගැනත් හොඳයි. ඒ විදිහට කරගෙන යන එක හොඳයි. නැත්තම් ගෙවල් වල තෙල් තියෙනවා සෙඩ් එකේ තෙල් නැහැ. ඇත්තටම මේ වෙනකොට ලෝකේ සමහර රටවල් තෙල් බෙදා හැරීම නතර කරලා තියෙන්නේ. නමුත් ලංකාවේ මේ කළමනාකරණය කිරීමෙන් මේ කටයුත්ත දිගටම කරගන්න පුළුවන්. මේ අවස්ථාවේ ඇත්තටම QR කෝඩ් එක හඳුන්වලා දීම ඉතාමත් වැදගත්. ඒකින්ද හැම කෙනාම මේ වෙනකොට අවශ්‍ය ප්‍රමාණයට තෙල් ලබා ගන්නවා.
කරපිරිවෙස්මෙන් වැඩේ කරගත්තා නම් මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ විසඳෙයි කියන අදහසින් තමයි ඉන්නේ. තෙල් ටික දුන්නා නම් QR එකට ගහන්න තිබ්බත් කමක් නැහැ. ඉතින් ඇත්තටම වෙන්න එපා මේ වෙලාවේ.
Deputy Minister of Digital Economy Ranga Veeraratne said in Parliament today that the QR-based fuel distribution system is now operational with a 95% success rate.
Instead of making our people learn a new system and go through the registration process all over again, we felt that by allowing them to use the same QR code they obtained 3 years ago, we could minimize the inconvenience and difficulties they face. That is why we introduced the option to use the previous QR code if one already existed. Therefore, no one needs to register anew. If you have that code, you can use it. However, there are 2 instances where a code created in 2023 might not be usable. If the ownership of the mobile phone has been transferred to someone else, or if the mobile phone connection has been deactivated, we will remove those previous registrations. Additionally, we wanted to ensure that if a vehicle has been sold, the new owner is able to register without any difficulty. To facilitate this, we first enabled the group that already had a QR code to obtain fuel. We initiated this after a 1-day delay. By doing so, we have minimized the risk of system downtime and ensured that we can provide a continuous service. When we look at the system parameters to assess its success today, we can see that there are currently 5,094,566 users utilizing the system. Furthermore, 439,997 new vehicles, those that did not exist in 2023, have now registered. We are seeing a significant increase in the volume of new registrations, which indicates to us that our people are adapting to this system.
While the public appears to understand the gravity of the crisis, what does the opposition leader have to say? Here's what opposition leader Sajith Premadasa stated in Parliament today, along with the response from the government.
I urge that with immediate effect all taxes on fuel be removed, including VAT, the Social Security Contribution Levy, Excise Duty, Customs Import Duty and the Special Commodity Levy. At this moment, it is important not to increase fuel prices, but to reduce them. I would also like to ask whether any study has been conducted on alternative mechanisms to meet the country's fuel requirements in the event of an attack on key energy infrastructure such as oil facilities and the potential escalation that could follow.
රටේ තෙල් අවශ්‍යතාවය සපුරාලා ගන්න ක්‍රමවේද පිළිබඳව විකල්ප ක්‍රමවේද පිළිබඳව යම්කිසි අධ්‍යයනයක් කරලා තිබෙනවද කියන එක මම අහන්නට කැමතියි.
ඩීසල් සංචිත ප්‍රමාණවත් වන දින ගණන
Diesel stocks are sufficient under normal consumption levels until the 12th April. Super diesel stocks will last until the 10th May. Octane 92 petrol is available until the 23rd April and Octane 95 petrol until the 10th May. Please note that these figures include both existing reserves and confirmed shipments. However, due to rising insurance costs for ships and cargo, and in some cases the inability to secure insurance, many vessels are reluctant to operate. So while we have fuel and we have the funds and dollars, the real issue is the lack of ships to transport it. That is the practical challenge we are facing. This situation was not created by the people of Sri Lanka or the government. It is a global issue. We are managing it carefully, monitoring developments daily and adjusting decisions accordingly. It is not possible to predict months ahead as this is not a conflict of our making. We are to some extent victims of it. Therefore, it is unrealistic to expect everything to continue as usual. We must manage this situation until the conflict subsides, and we believe we are handling it effectively.
ක්‍රමෝපායක සැලසුම් සකස් කිරීම.
What is needed is strategic planning and scenario planning. The attacks involving Iran, Israel and the United States did not begin yesterday. They have been developing over several months. This kind of crisis could have been anticipated in advance. If we kept anticipating conflict in Iran, we would have had to prepare for it since the 1980s. We would have had to introduce the QR system back then itself. Even when attacks occur, those directly involved are sometimes unaware in advance. We had already ensured that our fuel storage tanks were filled and procurement had been planned and ordered up to August. As a government, we have taken the necessary steps. Otherwise, we would not have been able to sustain operations this long. Due to our management, we have so far avoided even a single minute of power cuts. Of course, there is a cost to that, but that is the responsibility of a government. There may come a time when power cuts become unavoidable, but we are doing everything possible to provide relief to the public and ensure that industries continue to function normally. Even those who initiated this conflict have not been able to plan it fully. The United States once said it would end in 4 weeks. Can they guarantee that now? So I would say these are not simplistic issues that can be addressed with simplistic questions.
Amid escalating tensions in the Middle East, a lot of countries are facing an energy crisis right now. So to cope with the crisis and also to manage the situation, a lot of countries have taken different approaches, and even in Sri Lanka, 2 approaches were taken to manage the situation. The first one was to increase the fuel prices, and the second one was to introduce a QR code system to distribute fuel. So a lot of people have a question about why a QR code system was introduced for fuel distribution. And the primary objective of introducing a QR code system was to limit fuel consumption. Even though a QR code system was introduced, fuel was distributed to all the fuel stations all around the country without any disruption. Under normal circumstances, 7,300 metric tons of diesel and 5,300 metric tons of petrol are released daily to fuel stations. And now let's have a look about how fuel was distributed around the country during the past few days. On the 9th of March, 7,800 metric tons of diesel and 5,000 metric tons of petrol was distributed. And on the 10th of March, 7,000 metric tons of diesel and 4,000 metric tons of petrol was distributed. And on the 11th of March, it was 7,000 metric tons of diesel and 4,200 metric tons of petrol. And on the 12th of March, it was 6,800 metric tons of diesel and 4,200 metric tons of petrol. And on the 13th of March, 7,300 metric tons of diesel was distributed, while 4,950 metric tons of petrol was distributed. And on the 14th of March, 7,250 metric tons of diesel and 5,480 metric tons of petrol was distributed. On the 15th of March, the QR code system was introduced to limit fuel consumption. A lot of people have a lot of questions about why a QR code system was introduced in the first place to limit fuel usage or fuel consumption. The answer lies in the fuel usage data from March. During the first 9 days of the month, Sri Lanka consumed 57,000 metric tons of diesel and 47,000 metric tons of petrol, which is equivalent to 2 diesel shipments and 1.5 petrol shipments. Under normal conditions, Sri Lanka's average daily fuel consumption stands at around 4,800 metric tons of diesel and 4,045 metric tons of petrol. However, during the first 15 days of March, the daily fuel consumption level of Sri Lanka was doubled when it is compared to the normal usual level. So that is one of the primary reasons which led the authorities to introduce a QR code system to limit fuel consumption, and also in order to manage the situation, manage the demand, and also to safeguard future fuel supplies.
The energy crisis triggered by the ongoing conflict in the Middle East is affecting a growing number of countries around the world. India has been among the hardest hit so far, particularly due to the shortage of domestic cooking gas supplies. As of yesterday, India managed to bring in 2 gas shipments through the Strait of Hormuz. However, foreign media reported that members of the public are still being forced to wait in long queues to obtain gas.
For a week we've been running around for gas. They aren't giving us gas cylinders. The vehicle carrying the cylinders arrives, but they say it'll be delivered to our home.
India's Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas has urged the public not to panic or stockpile gas unnecessarily, assuring that supplies are continuing without interruption. Authorities have launched raids to identify individuals hoarding gas illegally, while gas distributors have called for tax reductions as a measure to help ease the crisis. India meets a significant portion of its crude oil requirements through the Strait of Hormuz. Between 12% and 15% of oil transported through the Strait of Hormuz is supplied to India. According to India's Ministry of Petroleum, the country has diversified its supply routes to reduce dependency on the strait. Foreign media reported that India has increased oil imports from alternative routes to as much as 70%. India has further stated that it currently holds sufficient oil reserves to manage the situation. Meanwhile, in response to the energy crisis, the Bangladesh government has appointed a special committee to control rising fuel prices. As a precautionary step to protect reserves, the government is also considering imposing daily limits on fuel supplies to filling stations in certain areas.
এখন তেল যদি রাষ্ট্রীয়ভাবে সংকট থাকে তাহলে ঠিক আছে, আর যদি সংকট না থাকে মানে কৃত্রিম সংকট করে তাহলে এটা হইছিল অসুবিধা। কারণ আমি আধা ঘন্টা বেশি হইছে, 1 ঘন্টা হইছিল সিরিয়ালে ছিলাম। একটা মানে 2-3 ঘন্টা লাইন দাঁড়ায় থাকা, যেহেতু 200 টাকা তেল নেওয়ার জন্য কিন্তু অনেকে অনেক ফানি হয়েছে, তার টাইমও চলে গেল, মাত্র 200 টাকা তেল পেলো। একদিন 500 টাকা 600 টাকা তেল যেটা দিতেছে, এটা নেওয়ার পরে সে তার সময়টা বাঁচলো, তার অফিসগামী সব কাজগুলো করতে পারলো।
আগে গভর্নমেন্ট হচ্ছে কম তেলের জন্য নির্দেশনা দিয়েছিল, পরে গভর্নমেন্ট আবার জনগণের পরিস্থিতি দেখে আবার তেলের ইয়েটা বাড়াই দেওয়ার পরে এখন সিরিয়ালের যে ইয়েটা এটা স্বাভাবিক।
रेगुलर बिहाफ पे ना इस्तेमाल की जाती हैं वो भी नहीं आ रही हैं, उसके अलावा शुगर की हैं वो भी नहीं आ रही हैं, पैनाडोल जैसा आइटम भी शॉर्ट है, सिरप भी शॉर्ट है, CSC 1000 आती है वो भी शॉर्ट है। तमाम सारी चीज़ें जो
स्ट्रेट ऑफ हार्मोज बंद होने के बाद से फ्यूल प्राइसेस दुनिया में शूट अप कर गए और पाकिस्तान में हमने देखा कि जो ऑयल प्राइसेस है 55 रुपए बढ़ाने पड़े, खासतौर पे एक ऐसे वक्त में जब हुकूमत पाकिस्तान IMF के प्रोग्राम में हम सब्सिडी भी नहीं दे सकते और हमें जो पेट्रोलियम प्राइसेस हैं वो पास ऑन करने आवाम की तरफ, और इसके साथ साथ हम देखते हैं कि गवर्नमेंट ने 55 रुपए का इजाफा किया, जिसके बायस एक स्पाइक आने की लग रहा है कि आने वाले दिनों में स्पाइक आ सकती है। इन्फ्लेशन की साइड के ऊपर खासतौर पे हम देख रहे हैं कमोडिटी प्राइसेस बढ़ना शुरू हो गए, किरायों में ऑलरेडी इजाफा हो चुका है।
Meanwhile, countries including Indonesia, Australia and New Zealand are also taking steps to prepare for and respond to the growing energy crisis.
News First with the people.
The war between Iran, the United States and Israel entered its 3rd week today, with intensified military operations, mounting civilian casualties and deepening disruptions to global energy markets. The conflict began on the 28th of February 2026 when the United States and Israel launched coordinated strikes on targets inside Iran. Since then, Iran has retaliated with missiles and drone attacks across the region, including against Israel and Gulf states, while commercial shipping through the Strait of Hormuz has ground to a near halt, triggering what analysts describe as one of the most severe energy shocks in decades.
Iran has denied closing the Strait of Hormuz, but warned that continued attacks against the country could have consequences for global energy security, as Tehran accused the United States and Israel of starting what it described as an unprovoked war and holding responsibility for rising oil prices. Zaid Khatibzadeh, the Deputy Foreign Minister of Iran, made this comment to Sky News.
How heroic is it, though, to attack oil tankers and to block the Strait of Hormuz and to hold the global economy to ransom and cause so much economic pain to so many other countries well beyond your enemies?
First of all, we have not yet, closed the Strait of Hormuz. This is the smart closure of the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, it's closed. No ships are going through.
No, the ships are going through. Those, those who are not participating in this, war of aggression on Iran. They are just passing the Strait of Hormuz, and it continues. Second, what we are happening here is that Americans are trying to suffocate Iran by not letting Iran to, by first of all targeting infrastructure in Khark and different cities and different islands that you have seen, and also they are trying to suffocate Iran. And Iran's message is very much clear. While we have not decided to close the Strait of Hormuz, but either security for all or those who are trying to suffocate Iran, they have to pay the price.
So what you're saying is as long as the attacks continue, the price of oil will continue going up, however much pain that is causing to many people around the world?
No. Yes, Americans and Israelis and those who are just supporting American Israelis are just responsible for what is happening for everybody. They have suffocating Iran for many decades. Terrorism, economic terrorism, sanctions, trying to deprive Iran from its own rights, and now they started this war of choice. Everybody, including your audience, should know who started this war.
US President Donald Trump has said the United States does not need the support of other countries, but still expects them to step forward and join efforts against Iran, questioning the reliability of long-standing allies while pressing for cooperation.
And I'll say, why are we protecting countries that don't protect us? And I've always felt that was a weakness of NATO. We were going to protect them, but I always said, when in need, they won't protect us. Now, this isn't need. Need would be one of the big boys. But I will say that we built the greatest military in the world, and we protect people. And if we need their mine boats, or if we need anything, any piece of apparatus that they may have because of a situation that they have, they should be jumping to help us, because we've helped them for years stay out of war.
Are you confident that France will help with the reopening of Strait of Hormuz?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I think he's going to help. I mean, I'll let you know. I spoke to him yesterday. I don't do a hard sell on them, because my attitude is we don't need anybody. We're the strongest nation in the world. We have the strongest military by far in the world. We don't need them. But it's interesting. I'm almost doing it in some cases, not because we need them, but because I want to find out how they react. Because I've been saying for years that if we ever did need them, they won't be there. Not all of them, but they won't be there.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer said the government's overriding priority remains the national interest, outlining a clear and consistent set of objectives guiding Britain's response to the ongoing conflict in the region.
Our priority is always the national interest. And so we have been clear and consistent in our objectives throughout this conflict. First, we will protect our people in the region. Second, while taking the necessary action to defend ourselves and our allies, we will not be drawn into the wider war. And third, we will keep working towards a swift resolution that brings security and stability back to the region and stops the Iranian threat to its neighbours. I want to see an end to this war as quickly as possible, because the longer it goes on, the more dangerous the situation becomes, and the worse it is for the cost of living back here at home.
The European Union has said that while the conflict underway is not Europe's war, Europe's interests are directly at stake, with the protection of EU citizens and the security of global shipping routes remaining top priorities.
This is not Europe's war, but Europe's interests are directly at stake. As this war expands, the EU's priority remains the protection of our citizens. We have evacuated more than 30,000 from the region, many on the flights also funded and organized by the European Union. Now, restarting the shipments of fertilizers, food and energy through the Strait of Hormuz is another urgent priority.
Iran's Khatam al-Anbiya Central Headquarters, the wartime command responsible for coordinating operations across Iran's armed forces, mocked US President Donald Trump over the American operation.
Message to the President of the United States. The outcome of war cannot be determined by tweets. The result of a war is determined in the field, the very place where you and your forces do not dare to approach, and you can only talk about it in your tweets. It's better to name this war as epic fear instead of epic fury.
US President Donald Trump has called on other countries to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz, but so far the response from allies has been muted, raising questions over why the United States Navy cannot restore access to the critical waterway on its own. Newsfirst's Juad Abdeen tells us more.
US President Donald Trump wants other countries to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz, but so far there is little enthusiasm. Now that raises a key question. If allies are reluctant, why can't the US Navy simply reopen the waterway on its own? The answer lies in geography, risk, scale. Now let's get into details. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow passage in the Persian Gulf. At its tightest point, the shipping lane is only 2 nautical miles wide. Yet, it normally carries around 1/5 of the world's seaborne oil and roughly a quarter of global natural gas supplies. Iran has now blocked ships from passing through the strait, while commercial vessels must travel just 3 to 4 miles from Iranian coastline, leaving ship captains with less than 2 minutes to react to threats such as drones or missiles. In theory, the US Navy could escort commercial ships through the strait. In practice, that would expose naval forces to significant danger from missiles, submarines, and sea mines. Such an operation would require destroyers that are currently tied up in ongoing attacks on Iran. Now, some military analysts say that even naval escorts might not be enough, and that securing the passage could require ground troops deployed along Iran's coastline. With military options limited, attention has turned to alternatives. Saudi Arabia is attempting to export more of its oil via the Red Sea instead of the Persian Gulf. However, that pipeline does not have the capacity to handle normal export volumes. As shipments remain blocked, Gulf producers are running out of storage space, forcing them to shut down oil fields entirely. Saudi Arabia's largest oil field has already been closed, and as a result of the conflict, around 7% of global oil production has already gone offline. If additional oil fields are forced to shut down, it could take months to bring them back into operation, even if the conflict were to ease. Now, the longer the Strait of Hormuz remains disrupted, the greater the risk to global energy supplies, and the harder it becomes to find a quick or even a simple solution.
French ambassador to Sri Lanka, Remy Lambert, says that France does not participate in the attacks undertaken by the United States and Israel in the Middle East. The ambassador made these remarks during the ambassadors' roundtable organized by the Pathfinder Foundation in Colombo.
Today, we are witnessing the brutalization of the world on a daily basis
In the Middle East, ladies and gentlemen, since February 28, war has again plunged this region under the fire of bombs. Its consequences, however, also destabilize other regions, starting with Asia, so dependent on import of gas and oils, whose vital flow is interrupted by the decision to close the Strait of Hormuz, taken by Iran. I say it clearly here, France does not participate in the attacks undertaken by the United States and Israel, whose decision was taken without consulting us. But France is not spectator to what is happening. It cannot live without reacting in support of the countries of the region with which we have defense agreements. Hit by Iran, which is pursuing a strategy of widening the conflict. Strikes that cause French casualties, such as recently in Iraq, where a French soldier who was on a mission to train Kurdish forces in the fight against terrorism was killed. We are acting purely defensively. We are also acting in a diplomatic capacity, talking with all the parties in the region. Iran, yes, we are talking with Iran. The president, the foreign minister, we are talking with Iran. Israel, the same, we are talking to the Israel leadership. The Palestinian authorities, Lebanon, and the Gulf states. We are talking to everyone. We call for de-escalation and an end to the crisis that will put an end to the destabilization of the region. The same line as Sri Lanka.
Former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa appeared before the Commission to investigate allegations of bribery or corruption today and provided a statement in connection with an investigation into the alleged unlawful allocation of housing units.
The Bribery Commission has launched an investigation into allegations that several housing units in a residential complex were illegally allocated to a small number of individuals. In relation to this matter, the Commission had informed the former president to appear before it on the 13th February. However, Gotabaya Rajapaksa had formally notified the Commission in writing that he had already made prior arrangements to travel to Singapore and requested that an alternative date be provided for him to appear. Accordingly, the former president appeared before the Bribery Commission today and gave a statement. He reportedly left the Commission premises a few hours later after completing the process.
Russell Peters, one of the world's most popular comedians, will bring his world-famous act to Colombo. The announcement was officially made today.
No way! You know, the good thing about my job is that I get to travel around the world and see all kinds of things. You ever heard people speak Russian? It's amazing. They just sound like they're talking backwards the whole time. Vladimir,
globally acclaimed comedian Russell Peters officially announced today that he will perform live in Sri Lanka on the 31st of March at 6 p.m. at Cinnamon Live City of Dreams as part of his Relax World tour.
I've actually really missed Colombo. I want to make sure they know I'm coming, and I wanted to make sure they know that I'm excited about coming there. So.
The event is organized by Australian migration consultants, promising an evening of high-energy comedy. Yes FM is the official media partner for the event. Tickets start at 25,000 rupees and are available at bookmyshow.com.
As Sri Lanka marks 30 years since winning the One-Day International Cricket World Cup, a serious question is being raised today. What has happened to Sri Lankan cricket? After remaining under the grip of a powerful clique for many years, the sport now appears to be drifting away from the people of the country, creating a situation where Sri Lankan cricket is increasingly being lost to the nation's public.
30 years ago, on an evening like today, the Gaddafi Stadium in Lahore, Pakistan overflowed with the roar of Sri Lankan cricket fans celebrating a historic triumph. After defeating all the world's strongest teams, Sri Lanka's cricketers etched the nation's name into the history of the one-day International Cricket World Cup. Today, the members of that 1996 World Cup winning team came together once again, this time at the Maharagama National Cancer Institute during a separate social service event. It was there that they reflected on the state of Sri Lanka cricket.
It is a great pride as a team. I am extremely proud that we were able to put Sri Lanka on the world map. There is a sense of disappointment as well, not because Sri Lanka lacks talent, but because of how the talent is managed, especially by administrators. If the cricket authorities guide the sport in the right direction, I firmly believe Sri Lanka has players capable of winning not just one, but several World Cups. You cannot solve a headache by changing the pillows. If we can set aside arrogance and mistakes and work together as a country to take this sport forward, it can be done. But to achieve that, everyone must come together and ensure the game moves forward.
People often say Sri Lanka is sitting on a treasure. Cricket is one such treasure. Cricket is not just a sport. It is a vehicle through which Sri Lanka's culture is carried to the world. Let us think for a moment about music, another way that culture is shared globally. If music falls into the hands of a small group and is taken to the world only according to their wishes, would any real music remain? Cricket is no different. If cricket is controlled by a clique and shaped solely by their interests, then the way Sri Lanka's culture is presented to the world will also be distorted. Victories in cricket are victories for the entire nation. That is why so much effort is invested in the game. The people of Sri Lanka deserve to experience again and again the joy of national triumph, just as they did in 1996. New talents must emerge and bring victories to the country. Only 11 players take part at one time, but those 11 represent an entire nation. For the sake of future generations, Sri Lanka cricket must be protected. That is why this struggle continues. Sri Lanka won the 50-over World Cup in 1996. In 2014, the country also won the 2020 World Cup. In the period between these victories, Sri Lanka reached 7 finals and semi-finals across major international tournaments. Consider this record. After winning the 1996 World Cup, Sri Lanka reached the semi-finals in 2003. They finished as runners-up in 2007. Again, Sri Lanka were runners-up in 2011. In 2009, Sri Lanka finished as 2020 runners-up. They were again runners-up in 2012. In 2014, Sri Lanka emerged as 2020 World Cup champions. From 1996 to 2014, a span of 18 years, Sri Lanka cricket stood at that level. But what has happened since then? For the past 10 years, Sri Lanka has not qualified even for a semi-final of an ICC tournament. Is it not time now to take the correct steps to guide Sri Lanka cricket back toward victory? Every delay only pushes the nation's triumph further away and costs the country far more than just results on the scoreboard.
Former Minister of Sports and Youth Affairs Roshan Ranasinghe expressed his views on the reasons behind the failures of Sri Lanka cricket during the Davasa program on Sirasa TV today.
ඔබතුමා ක්‍රීඩා අමාත්‍යවරයා හැටියට මුළු පාර්ලිමේන්තුවක් එක තැනකට ගේනවා. එහෙම ගෙනල්ලා පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ මේ ක්‍රිකට් එක යම්කිසි තැනකට ගෙනියන්න ඕනේ කියන මතය, ඡන්දය ඒ වෙලාවේ අරගෙන පාර්ලිමේන්තුවෙන් බහුතරය අරගෙන තමයි ක්‍රිකට් එක හදන්න එන්නේ. ක්‍රිකට් එක ඔබේ ඇමතිකම නැති කරන්න තරම් ප්‍රබල වෙන්නේ මේ කියන සන්දිස්ථානයෙන් කොතනදද?
ඉතිහාසයේ පළවෙනි වතාවට පාර්ලිමේන්තුවම එක මතයකට ගියනවා. යන්නේ ආණ්ඩුවත් විපක්ෂයත් දෙකම එකතු වෙලා වත්මන් ක්‍රිකට් පරිපාලනය ඉවත්ව යා යුතුයි කියන තැනට ඒකමතිකව තීරණය කරනවා. එහෙම වෙලාවක පැහැදිලිවම කිව්වොත් මෙතන රැකවරණය දුන්නේ හිටපු ජනාධිපතිවරයා සහ ඔහුගේ පුද්ගලික ලේකම්වරයාත් ඒට හවුල් වුණා. ඒ නිසාම තමයි ඇත්තටම මේ හිටපු ජනාධිපතිවරයා ඒ පරිපාලනයේ සාක්කුවට වැටීම නිසාම තමයි අපරට තැනකට මේ ක්‍රීඩාව කියන එක වින්දන මම පොඩියට ගන්න එක නෙමෙයි. මේ රට හදන්න නම් ක්‍රීඩාව හදන්න ඕනේ.
And that's a wrap of Primetime News on TV1 for tonight.
Thank you for watching. Good night.